Welcome to this explainer. You know, when we think of Greek gods, we usually picture these flawless, marble-sculpted beings, right? Lounging on high, sipping nectar. But the story we're diving into today completely shatters that mold. We are going to look at a deity whose path to glory absolutely wasn't paved with divine privilege. Instead, it was hammered out through grit, rejection, and just sheer, unparalleled genius.
So who exactly was the most indispensable yet completely disrespected god on Mount Olympus? I want you to picture something for me. Don't imagine a pristine, untouchable deity. Instead, picture a physically disabled, soot-covered outcast, a god who literally engineered his own respect. Even though he crafted the very weapons and palaces that gave the other gods their immense power, they treated him like an embarrassment. He was, without a doubt, the ancient world's ultimate underdog. It's a real testament to the idea that true power doesn't come from how you're born, but from what you can create. Enter Hephaestus, the sooty god of blacksmiths, fire, and volcanoes. If you look at the ancient texts, he's actually called things like the sooty god and the halting god. And by halting, they meant he walked with a really severe, heavy limp because of his curved feet. He's the master of artisans, fire, and the forge. His symbols aren't flashy lightning bolts or magical tridents. No, they're the working man's tools: a hammer, an anvil, a pair of tongs. We really have to contrast his sweat-stained, laboring nature and his physical mobility impairment with the effortless, pristine perfection of the other Olympians. I mean, he wasn't up there floating on clouds. He was covered in forge grime, literally wielding fire to bend metal to his will. Now, there are actually two contradictory, but honestly equally tragic, myths about how he fell from grace. According to some sources, like Homer's Iliad, Zeus tossed him from the heavens in a fit of rage because Hephaestus tried to protect his mother, Hera, from Zeus's advances. But if you look at other accounts, like Hesiod's Theogony, it was Hera's own rejection that caused his downfall. In that version, she literally casts him off Mount Olympus just because he was born with a congenital impairment. But here's the wild part. In both versions, he suffers this massive, literal, day-long fall from the sky, eventually crashing down hard onto the earthly island of Lemnos. Talk about a rough start in life, right? But, this devastating fall is exactly where our underdog story truly begins. Raised in exile down on Lemnos, he was cared for by sea spirits, specifically the Nereid Thetis and the Oceanid Eurynome. And the best part? He didn't just sit around wallowing in self-pity. Instead, he spent his time among the Sintians, an ancient tribe native to Lemnos, and that's where he really honed his master craftsmanship. He set up shop in volcanic islands like Liberi, Ambros, and Sicily. This whole period really builds our empathy for the guy. Cast out by the highest of the high, he goes and finds his true family among the marginalized and the earthly, just quietly developing skills that would eventually rival the powers of the cosmos. And man, did those skills set the stage for some incredibly clever payback. The engineer's revenge is this wryly humorous, almost sitcom-level trap. Step 1, he forges a magnificent, magical golden throne. Step 2, he sends it up to Mount Olympus, framing it as a nice little gift for his mother, Hera. The second she sits on it, boom, she is instantly trapped by invisible fetters. The other gods completely panic and start begging Hephaestus to come back to Olympus to let her out, and his brilliantly called response to them, "I have no mother." It is just a spectacular use of engineering against the very parent who tossed him away. So this brilliant little trap sets up a triumphant, a pretty chaotic return to Olympus. Ares, the big tough god of war, is the first one who tries to drag him back by force. But Hephaestus literally chases him off with blazing fire torches. No way that was happening. It actually takes Dionysus, the god of wine, to finally get the job done. Dionysus just intoxicates the smith, which leads to this absolutely hilarious, drunken procession back to heaven on the back of a mule. It's a scene you'll actually see depicted all over ancient Greek and Etruscan pottery. But Hephaestus, he's no fool. Once he's back, he uses his massive leverage to demand a ransom for Hera's release, completely securing himself a divine wife in the process. Now firmly secure in his place on Olympus, he sets up the ultimate divine master craftsman's workshop. We're talking a palace forge with 20 magical bellows that worked obediently just at his command. And get ready for this, because his greatest hits list is insane. He forged Achilles' invincible armor. He made Hermes' famous winged helmet and sandals. He crafted the terrifying Aegis breastplate. He even created the very first woman, Pandora, along with her famously terrible jar, or Pythos.
Basically, almost any finely wrought magical metalwork you ever hear about in Greek myth, yeah, that came straight from the fire and anvil of Hephaestus.
But this is where his unparalleled genius really shines. His creations went way, way beyond static armor or weapons. According to Homer, Hephaestus built automatons. An automaton is a moving mechanical device made in imitation of a human being. Just take a second to let that sink in. Thousands of years ago, the ancient Greeks were already conceptualizing robotics and artificial intelligence, and they attributed its invention to this disabled, outcast god. He was quite literally breathing a form of life into metal, completely blurring the line between mere craftsmanship and downright creation. Let's look at this ancient robotics in Greek myth, straight from the source material. Homer describes these golden handmaidens forged to look exactly like living maids, and they actually had speech, strength, and understanding in their hearts. They would physically support Hephaestus to help him walk around. He also built 20 self-moving wheeled tripods that could just roll in and out of the Olympian assembly halls entirely on their own. He even crafted immortal golden and silver guard dogs for the palace of Alcinios that never aged and never died. I mean, this is absolute science fiction, totally conceived back in the Bronze Age. How crazy is that? But, as we all know, professional success doesn't always translate to personal happiness, which brings us to love, betrayal, and a pretty epic sting operation. Whether he demanded her as his ransom to free Hera, or the other gods arranged it, Hephaestus ended up married to Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. It was this classic union of the grotesque and the gorgeous. And spoiler alert, it didn't last. Aphrodite started up a notorious affair with Eris. Yes, the exact same war god Hephaestus had previously chased off with firebrands. But as they were about to find out, you really do not want to cross a master engineer.
So here is exactly how this ultimate invisible net trap goes down. Helios, the all-seeing sun, spots the lovers and tips off Hephaestus. In response, our smith weaves a chain-link net so incredibly microscopic that it's completely invisible to the naked eye, yet entirely unbreakable. He sneaks in and sets the trap right over his own bed. So, the next time Ares and Aphrodite meet up, snap, they are instantly ensnared. Hephaestus then literally drags them before all the other gods just to shame them. The gods are absolutely roaring with laughter, and Poseidon even has to step in to guarantee a fine from Ares. It's this incredible moment where Hephaestus uses pure intellect and mastery of the forge to utterly humiliate a physically superior war god.
All right, it's time for the final reveal, where myth actually meets Bronze Age reality. See, for centuries, the limp, the curved feet, and his whole association with the forge were just sort of brushed off as colorful mythical details. Just a quirky backstory, right? But when historians and scientists started looking closer at the very specific physical ailments attributed to Hephaestus, they found something amazing, a direct, undeniable bridge between ancient mythology and the very harsh realities of ancient human industry.
This brings us to a massive aha moment when we compare the myth directly against the reality. So in the myth, Hephaestus is described as halting with curved feet, a disabled god of the forge whose condition comes from a magical birth defect or a crazy fall from the sky. But in reality, real Bronze Age smiths frequently added arsenic to copper to create harder arsenical bronze. Because they were breathing that in constantly, chronic arsenic poisoning or arsenicosis was a huge occupational hazard. And do you know what the symptoms of chronic arsenicosis are? Peripheral neuropathy, skin cancer, and severe lameness. So the mythic image of the disabled smith wasn't just some random story. It was an ancient folk memory reflecting the very real, tragic bodily sacrifices made by early human metalworkers. Basically, Hephaestus is the divine reflection of the human worker's suffering. So what does this all mean for us today? How does Hephaestus's enduring literacy prove that skill and creation can conquer even the greatest prejudice? Think about it. Hephaestus was literally thrown away, mocked, and betrayed by his own family. Yet he became the literal builder of the god's power. He took his trauma and his physical differences and transformed them into this undeniable, world-shaping genius. So next time you see a massive marvel of engineering, I want you to think of the sooty god of the forge. And remember that sometimes the absolute greatest creations come from the ultimate underdogs. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.